Hello and welcome to cEDH Portuguese League. First of all, we would like to wish everyone an amazing 2022, and we would like to begin this video with a quick recap from our latest tournament, Quest for the Cradle. This was our 5th event and the last one of 2021. We had 40 players from all around Portugal playing over 10 hours in 4 Swiss rounds, followed with the top 16 cut, moving to the semi-final and then the final. We would like to thank all of our players, and in particular to our patrons. Before we start, we would like to announce that our next event will take place in Lisbon at the 5th of March 2022. More information about the structure and rules and policy can be found in our social media. Our first player is Nox, piloting Thrasios Vial Smasher. This is a proactive deck that takes advantage of several enablers to assemble either an underworld breach or a thoracal line to win the game. Jeff is piloting Lonis, Cryptozoologist. This is a mid-range deck that seeks to create either infinite mana or infinite clues using Lonis as an enabler to win through thoracal lines. Kaka is playing Tymna Kraum. This is a control decklist. Despite its main win cons being underworld breach or thoracal lines, this deck can also play grindy games with a lot of interaction to stop its opponents from winning the game. Diogo is piloting Kenrith, the Return King. This is a mid-range deck that seeks to assemble an infinite mana combo and takes advantage of Kenrith as an enabler to either draw its entire deck or overrun its opponents. Nox mulliganed once and kept an opening hand with an Iceland, a Stomping Ground, a Flooded Strand and a Scalding Tarn as lands, a Training Ground, a Dockside Extortionist to attempt to win, and an Underworld Breach as a backup plan. Jeff also mulliganed once and kept the starting hand with a Verdant Catacombs and a Yavi Maya Cradle of Growth for lands, a Birds of Paradise, a Lodge Cobra, a Kraum and a Carpet of Flowers for early ramp, and a Mystical Tutor to fetch out for some interaction. Kaka mulliganed 3 times and kept the starting hand with an Exotic Orchard, a Kraum for ramp, a Gilded Drake, a CDC Faithful, and a Chain of Vapor as interaction. Diogo kept his first hand with a Marsh Flats, a Plateau and a Savannah for lands, a Whirly Tutor to fetch for an utility creature, a Stranglehold to delay its opponent, an Angel's Grace, and a Bloom Tender for an early ramp. Kaka won the die roll and is starting first. Let the first round begin. Kaka starts the game off playing an Exotic Orchard, followed by a Kraum, pitching a CDC's Faithful and chips a turn to Diogo. He draws and plays a Savannah. He follows it with an Esper Sentinel before passing. Nox moves to his turn. On his main phase, he simply plays a Scalding Tarn and also passes. Jeff begins his turn playing a Yavi Maya. He plays a Kraum pitching Findorn Elves and triggering the Sentinel, allowing Diogo to draw a card. The Kraum resolves, and Jeff still plays a Lodge Cobra before ending his turn. Kaka hopes to find a land on the top, but no luck. Since he doesn't have much more to do, he passes. Diogo moves to his turn. He plays a Marsh Flats and moves straight to combat, sending his Esper Sentinel at Nox for 1 damage, and after that he passes. On his hand step, Nox takes 1 damage to fetch for a Watery Grave tapped. Nox begins his turn playing a Stomping Ground untapped, taking 2 damage. Afterwards, he plays a Dockside Extortionist. No one responds, and Bruno creates 3 treasures. He plays his commander Thrasios and chips a turn to Jeff. He draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He takes 1 damage to fetch for an Island and plays his commander Lonis. He follows it with a Birds of Paradise, triggering his commander to create a clue, and after that he moves to combat, sending Lodge Cobra at Diogo and ends his turn. Kaka moves to his turn. He draws and once again fails to find a land on the top of his library. He decides to play his Gilded Drake. No one opposes, and he swaps the Gilded Drake with Jeff's Birds of Paradise before passing the turn. On his hand step, Diogo takes 1 damage from the Marsh Flats to fetch for a Zagot Triome. On his turn, he plays a Plateau, and after some consideration he decides to ramp, playing a Bloom Tender, and passes. On Nox's main phase, he plays a Training Ground, paying for the Sentinel's trigger. It resolves, and he follows it with a Flooded Strand before ending his turn. On his end step, Jeff cracks his clue to draw cards and moves to his turn. Jeff draws, and on his main phase he plays a Verdant Catacombs, triggering the Lodge Cobra, netting 1 mana. He takes 1 damage to fetch for a Tropical Island, netting 1 more mana from the Lodge Cobra, and he plays a Trinket Mage, triggering Lonis to create a clue. No one responds, and Jeff fetches for a Mana Crypt to his hand, playing it right away and follows it with a Carpet of Flowers. He moves to combat, sending the Lodge Cobra at Kaka for 2 damage and the Gilded Drake at Nox for 3 damage. No one blocks, and Jeff ships a turn. Kaka goes to his turn and draws, but once again no luck in finding a land on the top of his library. He plays a Chain of Vapor, targeting his own Gilded Drake and triggering the Sentinel. Diogo retains priority on the trigger and plays a Worldly Tutor to fetch for a Dockside Extortionist. He draws it, and Kaká resolves the Chain of Vapor, putting the Gilded Drake in his hand. He plays his Gilded Drake once again. It resolves, and this time he switches the Drake with Diogo's Bloom Tender. With nothing more to do, Kaká passes. In his end step, Nox takes 1 damage to fetch for a Tropical Island. Diogo, on his turn, takes some time to think on what to do next, and decides to move straight to combat, sending the Gilded Drake at Kaká for 3 damage. On his second main phase, he plays a Dockside Extortionist. Nox responds, activating Thrasios to maybe find some interaction, but ends up revealing a command tower. Still in response to the Dockside, Jeff cracks his clue to also find some interaction, but once again no luck. The Dockside enters the battlefield, creating 5 treasures. Afterwards, he plays a Stranglehold, to which Jeff immediately responds with a Mystical Tutor, not paying for the Sentinel. The Mystical Tutor resolves, and Jeff fetches for a Finale of Devastation to the top of his library. With the Stranglehold still on the stack, Kaká plays a Force of Negation, pitching a Swan Song and not paying for the Sentinel as well. The Stranglehold is countered, and Diogo plays a Taiga before ending his turn. Nox draws. He plays an Overgrown Tomb, untapped, taking 2 damage, and takes a moment. He decides to play safe and pass the turn. At the beginning of Jeff's upkeep, he rolls a die and ends up taking 3 damage from the Crypt. On his main phase, he plays a Mox Amber, this time paying for the Sentinel. Afterwards, he plays a Finale of Devastation, X being 1, but Nox responds activating Thrasios, revealing a Malevolent Hermit and drawing it. The Finale of Devastation resolves, and Jeff fetches for a Shrieking Drake to the battlefield, triggering its commander to create yet another clue, and targets the Shrieking Drake to put it in his hand. He plays the Shrieking Drake and bounces it, creating yet another clue. He moves to his second main phase, triggering the Carpet of Flowers, adding 2 blue mana to his mana pool, and repeats the Shrieking Drake's effect 2 more times before passing the turn. On his end step, Nox counts how many spells have been cast this turn and plays a Brain Freeze, creating 5 copies, all of them targeting himself. With that, Jeff ships a turn to Kaká. He draws, and finally hits a land. He plays a Marsh Flats and takes 1 damage to fetch for an Underground Sea. He follows it with his commander Tymna the Weaver and passes the turn. Diogo moves to his turn, and on his main phase he plays an Ashiok Dream Render. No one responds, and Diogo activates its ability targeting Kaká. He mills 4 cards, and all of the graveyards are exiled his way. He plays a Snow-Covered Mountain and leaves mana open just in case of some interaction is needed, and passes. After the previous play, Nox has to think on what to do next, so he decides to play a Malevolent Hermit and passes. On his end step, Jeff cracks 1 clue to draw a card, and moves to his turn. On his upkeep, he rolls a die and takes 3 damage, again from the Crypt. On his main phase, the Carpet of Flower triggers, and he adds 3 blue mana to his mana pool. He plays a Mystic Remora, paying for the Sentinel. It resolves, and after that he sacrifices 2 clues to draw 2 cards, and follows it with a Wild Growth targeting the islands. No one responds, and he casts a Shrieking Drake, targeting itself to bounce, creating another clue and ending his turn. Kaká on his turn draws, and plays his second commander Kraum, to try and get some much needed card advantage. He moves to combat, sending Kraum at Ashiok, and Diogo doesn't block. With that, Kaká ends his turn. Diogo on his turn plays a Snow-Covered Swamp, and decides to pass, but on his end step, Nox activates Thrasios 2 more times. The first time he reveals and draws a Veil of Summer, and the second time he reveals and draws an Ocean Thief, and moves to his turn. He draws. He plays a Wooded Foothills, and follows it with his second commander Vial Smasher the Fierce, before passing the turn. On his end step, Jeff sacrifices a clue to draw cards, and goes to his turn. On his upkeep, he rolls a die, taking yet again 3 damage from the Crypt, and pays to keep the fish for a little more time. On his main phase, he has 3 blue mana from the Carpet, and uses that mana to play the Shrieking Drake 3 times, triggering Kraum the second time he plays it, creating this way 3 more clues. He decides not to play anything and passes, saving mana just in case. Kaká begins his turn playing a Wishclaw Talisman, paying for the Sentinel's trigger. It resolves, and Kaká activates it to fetch for a card, giving the talisman to Jeff. He plays a Dockside Extortionist. In response, Jeff sacrifices 1 clue to draw and activates his commander's ability, sacrificing 3 clues, targeting Nox, but in response he activates Thrasios, revealing and drawing a Phantasmal Image. Lonis' ability then resolves, revealing 2 lands and an opposition agent, putting it into the battlefield. Lonis triggers, and Jeff creates 1 more clue. With that, the Dockside resolves, creating 10 treasures. He then moves to combat, sending Kraum at Nox for 4 damage. He takes hit, and Kaká loses 1 life to draw a card from the Tymna's trigger. After that, he ships the turn to Diogo. On his end step, Diogo plays an Abrupt Decay, targeting the opposition agent, while paying for the fish. It resolves, and Kaká ends the turn. On his upkeep, Diogo plays a Vampiric Tutor, Not paying for the fish. Kaká responds paying 2 life to play a mental misstep. Paying for the sentinel and not the fish. The vampiric tutor is countered this way and Diogo moves to his main phase. He plays a noble hierarch and moves to combat sending Gilded Drake at Kaká for 4 damage, due to Noble's Hierarchs to Exalted trigger. Kaká takes the damage and Diogo passes. On his end step, Nox activates Thrasios, revealing and drawing a Gitaxian probe. Nox, on his turn, draws, and on his main phase he plays a Bloodstained Mire, and tries to go for the win, starting with a Vial of Summer, not paying for the fish. To which Jeff immediately responds with a mental misstep. Nox answers it with its own mental misstep, triggering Kraum and not paying for the fish yet again. But Jeff plays a Fierce Guardianship, also triggering Kraum, and Bruno plays a Deflecting SWAT, swapping the Fierce Guardianship target to Jeff's mental misstep, not paying for the fish once more. Still, Jeff responds with a Memory Lapse, targeting the Veil of Summer. It resolves, and the Veil of Summer goes to the top of Nox's library. He proceeds to play a Gitaxian Probe targeting Kaká, not paying for the fish. It resolves, and Nox plays once again a Veil of Summer, not paying yet again for the fish, although this time Jeff was prepared and plays a Flusterstorm, creating 8 more copies on the stack, all countering the Veil of Summer. Nox decides to keep and try to win, despite the counter war, and plays a Phantasmal Image. In response, Kaká sacrifices 3 treasures to play an Intuition, not paying for the fish as well. In response, Bruno sacrifices Malevolent Hermit to counter it, but Diogo remembered Kaká about the Sentinel trigger, and Kaká then sacrifices 4 more treasures to pay for the Sentinel and the Malevolent Hermit's ability. Kaká resolves the Intuition, fetching for a Silence, an Unroll Breach and an LED. Jeff gives Kaká the Silence. He sacrifices the rest of his treasures for white mana, and the Phantasmal Image comes into play as a copy of a Dockside Extortionist, creating 9 treasures this way. Nox plays a Benevolent Geist from his graveyard. He plays a Tainted Pact, not paying for the fish, forcing Kaká to play the Silence. In response, Nox activates Thrasios one more time. He reveals and draws an Ad Nauseam, casting it right away in response to the Silence, again not paying for the fish. In response, Jeff plays a Cyclonic Rift targeting Benevolent Geist. Without the Geist, Kaká plays a Dispel, not paying for the fish, to counter the Ad Nauseam. It resolves, and the Ad Nauseam is countered this way. The Silence resolves, and Nox passes the turn, forgetting to resolve the Tainted Pact. Jeff moves to his turn, and on his upkeep he rolls a die and finally escapes from the crit damage, and lets the fish go, proud of its performance. He draws, and on his main phase he plays a Polluted Delta, triggering the Lodge Cobra, netting 1 mana. He follows it with an Allosaurus Shepherd. He takes 1 damage to fetch for an island, where in response Diogo plays an Haven Mind Sensor. Still in response, Jeff activates a Wishclaw Talisman to tutor for a card to his hand. With the Haven Mind Sensor still on the stack, he plays a Chord of Calling, X being 1, and triggering Kraum. The Chord of Calling resolves, fetching for a Kyrian Ranger to play, creating a clue from Lonis trigger. He plays a Phantasmal Image as a copy of a Dockside Extortionist, creating 5 treasures. He immediately uses the treasures to play an Ashaya. He explained that he has an infinite mana combo with a Kyrian Ranger if Ashaya resolves. So Kaká in response casts a Demonic Consultation for a Pact of Negation, hoping anyone can deal with the Allosaurus Shepherd in order to counter the Ashaya. Unluckily for Jeff, Diogo has an Angel's Grace in hand. He sacrifices the last treasure and plays it to prevent Jeff from winning, ending the game in a tie. Even though the match ended in a tie, we were able to see some pretty good plays during the first round. Congratulations to all players. Tell us on the comments your thoughts about this game. What would you do different from the plays you saw this game? Next week we'll have the second round featuring Danilo piloting Ikra Kraum, Jaime piloting Tassigur the Golden Fang, Mario also piloting Ikra Kraum, and João piloting Winota. This will be a game you don't want to miss. As always, if you enjoy our content and would like to see more, you can help us by hitting that like button and subscribe, or by becoming a patron. Remember to follow us on our social media for more details about future events. See you in the next one. We would like to thank the SplitSecond for the partnership, the Monarch team for providing us the Squire bot to help us run our tournaments, and Arena Devir for providing us the place to make it all happen.